And what about Terrace and his work? When did you first become aware of that?
Well, Spud, Robert, our mutual friend, he's always like, oh, that guy's my brother, or that's my cousin, or whatever, and they never actually are, but there was one brother that he was talking about all the time, because, you guys, lived together, right? Or,
Yes. Since I was 13.
Right. So they grew up together, and he was always talking about Terrace as, like you said before, like being on both sides of that divide between hip-hop and jazz, and also, the music world is full of wonderful people who can play music wonderfully, but not everyone has their shit together, I guess, is a way of saying it, in terms of just, being enterprising and ambitious without being networky, and, just taking care of business and wanting to create, and not being, a passive creator. And he always described Terrace as that, a person who really goes after projects and seeks to create. And but we all have him among other people, but definitely him to thank for "To Pimp a Butterfly," that Kendrick Lamar record, which turned the whole music world. It was like, oh wait, it's okay to be musical again in popular music. It's so important. So it kind of, that record, especially to me, fulfilled all the stuff that Spud had said. But then we had played gigs where you played a gig with Glasper with Snarky Puppy, where he was playing alto. And
I opened up for while I was working on "To Pimp Butterfly," we opened up and rushed back
to the studio. Yeah.
The idea that both of you guys reached a point very early on where you weren't just playing or band leading, where you stepped over that line and became producers. Where you went from the live room into the control room, and you started to think about getting the sound down. And can you describe that moment when you said, that's the hat that I'm going to put on too, that I am going to think about what it is to record?
For me personally, that was the first hat it was, because I come from the West Coast. I come from a place called South Central Los Angeles, where my heroes, way before I knew who Miles Davis was or John Coltrane, my first heroes was Eazy-E and Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. Yeah, for sure, Crenshaw District. So for me, being from LA and being a product of hip hop, because I know I come from jazz, and the honest to God thing, my thing is, my bass is 2 turntables and a mixer and a drum machine. The saxophone's later in my life. So for me, producing records or writing songs was all just that's what we did in my neighborhood. Everybody had a drum machine or these things like that. Then I had my other friends that played instruments. So for me, it was always a thing of wanting to write or wanting to work with Snoop Dogg or wanting to work with just the dopest rappers. Because before I played, I rapped. So it was very important for me to just make sure I was involved in that hip-hop thing. And production is a huge key point into that. With hip-hop, it's not really, you don't have the hip-hop player, and it's just, you usually, the cool thing about hip-hop is such a gumbo of everything. Most of the artists and the MCs are really the producers of the records anyway. So producing is part of our culture in hip-hop music. That just, it comes with it. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a hybrid, it's not a separation, it's one thing.
It's very opposite to the jazz world.
Completely opposite.
Where production is kind of sometimes the last thing that jazz musicians think about, because they're so focused on the live performance and the live energy. It's almost like hip-hop and jazz are really on opposite ends of that production spectrum often. But I think the best jazz records are immaculately produced, Yeah. You think about the Taylor Macero stuff, and, but that's another thing.
What about yourself? When did you make that step forward and say, well, this is what I want to do?
I didn't do it because I aspired to do it. I did it because I had a band, Snarky Puppy, when I was 19, and we wanted to make a record, and I didn't know any producers, and I didn't have any money. So I was the
That
producer.
sounds like hip-hop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe it's the same thing, yeah. So I really cut my teeth at the thing, just flying completely blind. Just flying by the seat of my pants and failing often and trying not to fail the same way twice. And then So I did like 3 Snarky Puppy records before I produced anything else. And then when I moved to New York was really when I started getting into it, which was only 7 years ago. And I got lucky. There was this lawyer who wanted to make an album, and he didn't know how to do it. And one of my friends was like, "Oh yeah, my friend Mike can help." You know, he's produced. So I came in, and I had never produced anything but Snarky Puppy. So for me, producing for Snarky Puppy was just an extension of band leading for Snarky Puppy, right? I didn't have any knowledge of preamps or Pro Tools or recording techniques or microphone choices or anything. It was just kind of like telling people what to play when, and if something felt bad, changing it. That's what producing was to me. And it still is, actually. I feel like the more I learn about producing, the more it goes back to just being a totally intuitive, no rules process. Like, if it sounds good and it feels good, it's right. That's production, you know? But then when I got hooked up with this lawyer, he paid me $100 a day, which for a producer is like, you know, what, 1/20th of what you should be getting per day. But I had no experience, so it was like $100 per day every day for 2 months to go into the studio with him. And he was just burning money on this studio, you know, and paying me peanuts, but it was almost like a paid internship. Like, I could try out every idea I had in my brain, and, you know, 90% of them sucked. But I learned that, and then I just tried to never do them again. And the 10% that worked, I tried to kind of remember and extrapolate later.
Very nice. Very nice. But we don't have any idea who this lawyer is at this point. I mean,
well, now he's my lawyer, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I didn't.
But I mean, as far as his own recording project,
no.
It didn't take.
It wasn't a #1 hit.
No.
But he's a great guy, and we're still really great friends, and a really nice musician too.
You know, there's this thing that you know, jazz musicians talk about their sound, getting that individuality, the way that their music gets expressed. It's there with producers too. Do you see yourselves as producers as having a certain touch, sound, imprint, you know, the way that players do?
I try to be a servant of the artist. You know, I think it's. I mean, we have a thing. I mean, every human in this room has a fingerprint, and no matter where you go, your fingerprint is on everything you touch. And I think with musicians, it's the exact same thing. But you don't want to just dip your finger in ink and smear it on every record you make, you know, and impose your sound on it. Although there's some producers that I love that do that. When you hear a record, you're like, that was definitely produced by that guy, because it sounds like him or her. But I try to not be that way. I love producers that are like, you know, that have a catalog that's very versatile, and that the fingerprint is more one of quality and taste rather than style. You know what I mean? If you put like a folkloric Cuban artist in the studio, like a Yoruba, you know, percussionist, you don't want to make him try to sound like a Dr. Dre record, unless that's what they're going for. You know, so I try to keep it different. I mean, this past month I finished mixing a record for Eliades Ochoa, who's the singer and guitarist for the Buena Vista Social Club, and then also a record from a debut record from a half Swedish, half Thai artist that sounds kind of like Nine Inch Nails, and it was so fun to go down those different paths. And I know Terrace is the same. He's always on different sides. I don't know if he thinks about it the same way, but
I do. Yeah, I don't. I mean, when it comes to production, like a sound, like for me in my experience, a lot of my heroes do have a sound. From my opinion, well, what I learned from them, I didn't want to stick with just one thing, because when people got tired of that one sound, they just moved on.
Yeah.
You know, and I never want to be, and I'm not never going to be the flavor of the month. So I have to always evolve and change. So every artist, like, it's just different, you know. Whether it's, if I was to work with Snarky Puppy, it would be something I've never ever done before, so it would be different. Mm. Even when I work with me and Kendrick have been working together for 14 years, but every time we work, the first thing we said is we don't want to do nothing we did the last album. Mm. So let's not even use the same keyboards we used on the last album. You know what I mean? Let's just be different. Like on To Pimp Butterfly was highly music instruments, but then this last album we just did called Damn, I was sampling a lot with a drum machine and a turntable with no keyboards, because we wanted to go back to what we call the basics for us, which is the boom bap, the turntable, the drum machine, and the MC. So
That was a conscious decision with Damn.
Yeah, it was conscious because we felt on To Pimp a Butterfly, it did from what we hear, it turned some things over. But the other side to Pimp a Butterfly, it did a lot of great things, but a lot of it didn't touch a lot of parts where we come from in the ghetto, because it was so extreme music that all the music people loved it, and jazz musicians loved it, and there was a lot of political things on that, and it was a high skill level hip hop record. But we had abandoned the club, we abandoned the strip club, we abandoned everything that hip hop was, a lot of things that hip hop was built on. So we didn't want to just totally leave them behind. We gave them that, so let's give them Damn so we could get these kids back involved, because it's about the kids too, and we want to make sure kids can move, dance, and hear a message. So if you have a lot of music going on, sometimes that sounds like calculus to a kid that may just be taking basic math. You know what I'm saying? So it was conscious to say, yo, let's get back to the hood shit. Let's get back to just 808. We don't care if the 808 is out of tune with that. We don't care about a hook. We don't care about none of those things. So that was conscious of just, let's stay away from what we just did. That was kind of the only thing.